Hello and a big warm welcome to you to this presentation from the Urban Penguin. My name is Andrew Mallett and today we're going to take a look at how we can create our own Vagrant boxes. Vagrant is a management system that allows you to easily manage your virtual machines, no matter the hypervisor or the virtualization software that you are using. We're going to customize our own image. So building a new installation of Debian 12 inside of VirtualBox, we're then going to look, once we've made all of our customizations, we will look at creating a Vagrant box from that. Having our Vagrant box allows us then to easily clone that system and manage it through from the command line with the Vagrant command. Come on, I think you're going to find this really useful. So here we are then, working in my OS X system and with VirtualBox. Now the hypervisor you use, I'm using VirtualBox, is down to you, but obviously the steps may differ. Also, we're going to be installing Debian 12. Of course, if you're using a different operating system, then the steps of the installation are going to vary as well. But let's make a start on creating a new VirtualBox VM, and we can use then this VM as our template for our Vagrant box. The name I'm setting is Debian 12. It doesn't really matter, but that name becomes important later on. So you can set it to any name, but we need to reference that name. I'm just using then the latest Debian 12 net install ISO. And we're going to make sure that we skip the unattended install so I can then set parameters that I want during the installation. As we run through with next, we can set the amount of memory that we need. We won't be running a graphical environment, so a gig of RAM will be more than enough. And when we look at the disk space, it's assigning 20 gig, but the reality is I probably won't need that amount of space, and I'm going to set it to 10 gig, but obviously set the right amount for your template that you're going to need. Here, 10 gig is going to be more than enough for most of the virtual machines that I will be creating. When we go through and finish, it won't start our virtual machine, but leaves us with a defined virtual machine. As I then go through, I can choose Start and then our normal start, and it will fire up the virtual machine, the installation process. I don't want to do the graphical install. We're installing a command line only version, and I'm going to use the text-based installer. So the machine starts firing up, and I can full screen. And I can just choose then the basic locale settings. Obviously, I'm setting UK and British English, but you could set something else. The hostname of Debian will work for me, but if we needed a different hostname, you could configure it. The domain name I'm going to leave blank, and we can continue through this. The root password I'm setting to Vagrant. If you're using it only for yourself, then you can set any password, but so it's known by other users, we use Vagrant. We also create a new user called Vagrant. So with a full name of Vagrant and the login name of Vagrant, this is what the Vagrant Virtual Machine Manager is going to use. And again, this would normally have a password of Vagrant. So our root user and our Vagrant user will have a password of Vagrant. The Vagrant user has to exist because it is used by the Vagrant management system. Now we can design our disk layout. And of course, this is all down to you. You can use anything that you want, but I'm going to use the LVM management system. Generally, I'm working with LVM, so it makes sense to move away from the defaults in this case. But I emphasize this is your customized virtual machine. So I set the guided LVM, and then I can choose, do I need separate logical volumes? I'm just going to say no, all files in the one volume. And we can just continue through with the rest of the defaults. Now we get into install the base operating system. So this is coming from the DVD. Once that is installed, we can then go through and say, do we need to scan for other media? Well, we don't. We can connect to our standard apt repositories. And again, I'm just choosing UK for a local UK mirror, and I don't need to use any proxies. We're now then retrieving metadata from the web about packages that are available. We can choose to participate in the user survey. I'm just choosing no on this. And then in our task select, we say, well, what type of task do we want for our server or desktop? So we don't want a graphical environment, so I deselect GNOME and the desktop environment, but we want then SSH to be working because Vagrant is going to connect to the SSH server. So we definitely need that up and running. And then we can continue with the install. Once that's completed, we then need to install the Grub bootloader, choosing to install on the only disk that we have, and we can allow that then to run through. We're now ready, our installation is complete, and we can reboot, so we can allow the system to reboot. And now we should be able to log on as our root user with a password that we set. Remember, we're working with the default password of Vagrant. So our system then is up and running and looking good. But this is where we can start configuring it a little bit more and customizing it with what we need. During the installation, we could choose a lot of our settings. So if I look at hostname CTL, well, we can see then that it is Debian 12 that we are up and running with. If I go through and look at my time date CTL, we can see then that we are set for the correct time zone. And if I use locale CTL, we're going to be able to see that we've got the correct locale settings that we configured during the installation. But again, if these aren't correct, we could change them now. We need to make sure that our Vagrant user has full rights to the system. So we can go through and make sure that sudo is installed. So I'm just running apt install and sudo. The sudo package isn't included in the base install. Now that that's installed, I can create a configuration file using vi-sudo. Moving through into our etc and sudoers.d directory, I can create a new plugin file for our user Vagrant. We just specify the option -f to vi-sudo so it knows which file to work with. If the file's not there, and it won't be, we can create a new one. And then as we go through, we can specify for the Vagrant user, no matter which system this is being read from, so on all hosts, is able then to sudo as the root user, and without the need of a password, no passwd : and then all. We can save that, and that's good to go. Now he'll have his sudo privileges through there. But just in case there's anything else that he needs, let's say from the sudo group, we can go through and add the user to the sudo group. So that's quite a simple user mod command, -a, uppercase G, sudo Vagrant, adding the Vagrant user to the sudo group. Now, in a lot of Debian-based systems, the preferred editor is Nano, so the concentration is on Nano, but I would always want to use Vim, so I can install then the Vim text editor. Remember, I'm customizing this so it works the way that I want. So that's a simple install of Vim. I'm then going to edit a configuration file, the etc and input rc. I don't like the bell for tab completion, so I can go through and turn this off. So I just uncomment the line that says set bell style null, and then save that. And say this is my preference, but remember this is me configuring the machine for what I want when I create virtual machines using Vagrant from this template. Now we have been working as root, but we need to change now to our Vagrant user. So we can use su for our substitute user, minus to get a full login shell, and Vagrant. We are root, so we are not prompted for the Vagrant user's password. But now we're here, we can set up the .ssh directory. So mkdir -m700, so it's private to the Vagrant user, and .ssh. We now need to download the public key of the Vagrant user. This way we trust the key, so we can use key-based authentication. So we use wget -O .ssh and make sure we've got authorized _keys typed correctly. And then we need to go through to HTTPS. And again, just make sure you're typing this correctly. raw.githubusercontent.com. Looking at the HashiCorp account, so /HashiCorp /vagrant /master /keys /vagrant.pub. The Vagrant system is going to log on as the Vagrant user, so the public key must be set up in the system. We can check now that it is in the authorized key. We can make sure the permissions on this are correct as well, so making it private again through to our user. We don't need the execute permission on the file, but of course the execute permission is required on the directory. So the directory has the permissions of 700, the file permissions of 600. We can clear out our history because we don't really need it, so history -C, and then make sure we write it. What I don't like to see is that we've got a list of commands already in our user's history when they first log on. We can exit, so we return back to our root shell, and we can configure the machine a little bit more. We're going to go through and make sure that we can install our VirtualBox guest editions. So we need some of our kernel tools and compilation tools. So we're going to add in DKMS as a package. We can go through then to our Linux headers for our current kernel version. So we can use Linux-headers and then $ and parentheses uname -r and then build-essential. Okay, we can hit the big enter key on this and allow it to chug through. But once it has installed, we're getting pretty much ready to go. We have to install our VirtualBox guest editions, but again, for this, it may be a good idea to make sure that the system is rebooted. So I'm just going to do a power off. I'm doing a power off rather than a reboot because I want to be able to connect the guest editions ISO file. So make sure you've got that downloaded. I've already downloaded it. We can go into our settings and then storage, and then connect to our DVD the VBox guest editions, and then just choose OK. Fire our machine back on again and allow it to go through the boot process. Again, we're going to log on as root, and we need to mount the CD-ROM. So mount /dev/CD-ROM, and we just put it into our temporary /mount directory /mnt. From there, we can go through and run the installer /mount and then vbox linux additions.run, and then allow this to run through. At the end, it will say that it needs to be reloaded again, but of course the VirtualBox is going to be fired up every time, so I don't really need to do my reboot now. I just power off the machine And now I have built my template system. And of course, you can adjust that any way that you want. But we've got a virtual machine called Debian 12 now. Moving out to my command line where I work with Vagrant, we make ourselves a directory. I'm just going to call it Debian 12 here. Move into this. And of course, when we list the content, it's a new directory, so there's nothing there. But we're going to change that. We're going to start putting content into there. We've built our virtual machine, and we might think, well, there's an awful lot of work involved in that. But it's going to start paying off now, because we can allow Vagrant to do a lot of the work. So we use Vagrant and the subcommand package, -- base. So now we're looking for the base VM to copy into a box file. The output then is going to be debian12.box. The output name doesn't matter, but the -- base does matter because we have to have a virtual machine called Debian 12. So we're then looking for that virtual machine and we're exporting it. It takes a little while, but then we'll see that we've now exported it and we are compressing it. And then again, after a little while, it will be finished. But now we have our box file. We can go ahead and list the directory again, and we're going to be able to see then our box file. But the reality is it's no good just set in this directory. We need to make sure that it's stored locally for Vagrant. So we do keep it here for the moment, but we then add it to our Vagrant system. So again, making use of our friendly Vagrant commands, we can go through and add it to the local list of Vagrant boxes. So let's quickly clear the screen and use Vagrant box add Debian 12 box, and that's local in this directory. And then -- name. We're going to name the box in our collection, and we're just calling it again Debian 12. It then adds it through to my personal list of available boxes. Now the local .box file is still going to be there. Technically I don't need it. I also don't need to delete it, but just for clarity, I'm going to delete it. So rn debian12.box. But now when I go through and take a look at Vagrant box list, we're able to see then my Debian 12 box built from VirtualBox. I didn't create any metadata files, so the version number is 0 because that's not been configured. But we can see then that it's available for me to use, and the power now is at my control. If I go through and use Vagrant init, we're going to create a Vagrant file. I don't need all of the comments, so I'm just using -- minimal, and then on the box Debian 12. And that's it, it's created my Vagrant file. This is my specification to work with. And when I look at then cat Vagrant file, we're able to see then that we've got our VM box configured for Debian 12. Now we can test it. So Vagrant up, using the provider VirtualBox. It references my Vagrant file, and we can see now that we're importing our base box Debian 12. It will go through the normal process once we've imported it of firing the machine up. And we can see then that it's making the connection in as the Vagrant user using the private key. So this is the idea of downloading the public key and putting it in the Vagrant's authorized key file. It will continue through the login process. We generate a new key pair to get rid of then the insecure public key. But our system is up now, and we can use Vagrant SSH to connect into our system and look at this, my Debian host. And of course, configured the way that I set it. So when we look at time date CTL, we've got then our UK time zone set. So that's all looking good. When we go through and look at the bell setting from our input RC file, then again, that's set the way that I wanted. And of course, it's configured with the memory that I set, the 1 gig of RAM. And if I go through and look at the disk space for my root file system, so df-h on root, we can see then that we've used 2 gig and we've got roughly 6 gig available for our root file system. But this is now great. I can easily create instances of this virtual machine and work at the command line. I can exit out, I can halt the machine, or I can destroy the machine. Destroying it just deletes then the copy when we cloned the box to create the virtual machine. Halt keeps the machine there so I can fire it up again.
All that is left to say is thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this, then you are probably sadder than I first thought. For more of this drivel, please subscribe, like and comment to @TheUrbanPenguin.